Before we start drawing molecules, we have to know that different numbers of covalent bonds involve different numbers of electrons. So single bonds are associated with 2 valence electrons, 1 from each element. Double bonds consist of 4 shared electrons, 2 from each element. Bonds consist of 6 electrons, 3 from each element. So we're going to start with this example of CCl4, and step number 1 is to count the total number of valence electrons. So we're going to look at the subscript for carbon first. It's a 1, and each carbon gives us 4 valence electrons, so 4 times 1 gives us a total of 4 valence electrons from the carbons. Chlorine, which is a 4, each chlorine gives us 7 valence electrons, so 7 times 4 gives us 32 total electrons for the drawing. Remember, the central atom is always written first, except for hydrogen, which can never be the central atom. So we have our carbon here, and we're going to surround it with 4 chlorines, and we're going to connect those chlorines to the carbon with single bonds. Your shared electrons, there are now a total of 8 electrons accounted for in the drawing. So we started out with 32 total electrons needed. We just added 8 with the single bonds. So now we have a total of 24 electrons left to add to the drawing. Step number 3 is to add valence electrons to the outer elements to fill their valence shell. Each element needs 8 to be happy, except for hydrogen, which only needs 2. So we're going to add 6 electrons to the chlorine at the top, 6 electrons to the chlorine at the right. We're going to add 6 more to the one on the bottom and 6 more to the one on the left, and that's going to give us 24 total electrons added, and that should also fill each chlorine's valence shell. We're going to make sure that the elements have 8 valence electrons associated with them, circling them. So each chlorine has the 6 unpaired electrons and the 1 single bond for a total of 8. And the carbon has 4 single bonds. Each single bond is 2 electrons, so that also has 8 valence electrons. Step number 4 is to add leftover electrons to the central atom. Because we don't have any leftover electrons to add, we can skip this step. Step number 5 is to rearrange single bonds into double and triple bonds if the central atom still does not have a valence shell. Again, carbon already has a full valence shell, we can skip this step here. Electrons. 3 fluorine atoms are going to give us a total of 21 electrons. We're going to add those two numbers together to give us a total of 26 valence electrons for this drawing. Step number 2 is to connect all the atoms to the central atom using single bonds. So we have nitrogen surrounded by 3 fluorines. We're going to connect those with single bonds. So we had 26 electrons. We just used 6 with single bonds, and now we have a total of 20 more electrons to add. Step number 3, we're going to fill out the fluorine's valence shell. So we're going to add 6, 6, and 6 here to each fluorine. So now we have 26 total to start with. We used 6 with single bonds. We just used another 18 with the single electrons, and now we have 2 more to add. Step number 4 is to add remaining electrons to the central atom. We have 2 more left, so we're going to add those to nitrogen. Okay, so that we started with 26. We used the 24 there, and we just used the last 2 for nitrogen, so that electrons to add. Step number 5 is to rearrange any bonds into double and triple bonds if needed. Basically, we're going to circle all the fluorines and count them up. Each fluorine has 6 single electrons and a single bond for a total of 8. And nitrogen has 3 single bonds for 6 and 2 single electrons for 8. So it does not need them.
Created using Powtoon.